This video about what would be the best diet for humans, both for health and longevity. The first video is introduction. Evolution has been taking place for billions of years, with organisms constantly adapting and evolving to better suit their environments. Modern humans, for example, are a result of a lengthy and complex adaptation process that began with earliest forms of the life on Earth. Biological organisms have had to adapt to changing climates, geological upheavals, and variety of environmental challenges over time. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution explains how existing biological species gradually adapt to their environment over time. It has also become the foundation of modern materialistic biology. However, this theory does not explain how new species emerged. When it comes to the sudden appearance of new species, there are still many unanswered questions. The Cambrian explosion occurred approximately 538.8 million years ago, when virtually all major animal phyla began to appear in fossil records. It was a time in geological history when there was sudden explosion of complex life forms without clear evidence of a common ancestor. This event remains one of the great mysteries in the evolutionary biology. Every organism, from horse shore crabs in Thailand to the most complex forms of life on Earth, tell us a unique story of adaptation and survival. And as we continue to study the natural world, we can only hope to gain a better understanding of the origins and evolution of life on Earth. Here at the plot, it is presented how the biodiversity was changing on our planet. So it was this Cambrian explosion was about this time, and it was a lot of complex life form appeared from nothing. So this is some illustrations how strange these living organisms were. And this also, and this. Some of these organisms survive till now. This is a horseshoe crab, which is, you can find these creatures in Thailand on some islands. Humans, as we know, have one fewer chromosome than their closest relatives, primates and such as Neanderthals. The chances to get such a mutation are so slim that some experts have previously discussed the possibility of artificial engineering of the genetic code. Humans are also fundamentally different from apes in that they can cooperate, live in tribes, and even establish sovereign national states. When the alpha male in primates have a large number of females, primates commonly live in harems. One explanation for this difference in social behavior between primates and humans could be the difference in reproductive biology. The alpha male in primates dominates sexual reproduction in most primates, in most other males, preventing other males from mating with the females in his harem. Human females, on the other hand, have menstrual cycles that are much more frequent than those of most primates, which means that sexual arousal can occur multiple times per day rather than once a year. This has most likely contributed to the evolution of monogamous human relationships, as it allows both males and females to form close, long-term bonds that facilitate regular sexual activity and offspring production. Of course, not all human societies are monogamous, and the social structures and reproductive strategies used by different cultures around the world vary greatly. Nonetheless, one of our species' defining characteristics is the ability to form complex social relationships and build cooperative societies, which has which has played a critical role in our ability to thrive and adapt to a wide range of environments and challenges throughout our history. Another stage in human evolution was the transition from eating fruits, leaves, and plant roots to primary eating food of animal origin. Climate change caused tropical forests to disappear at some point in time. Instead, savannas grew, which were vast grasslands where herbivores grazed. Here's the picture representing savannas in Africa. As a result, large predators such as lions and tigers appeared to hunt these creatures. Human ancestors were small and weak animals that couldn't run fast back then. The loss of large trees meant that females and children could no longer hide from predators. More importantly, there was a scarcity of leaves and fruits to feed on. Due to chronic hunger, some of our forefathers may have been forced to collect large bones from the corpses of ruminants killed by large predators. Scavengers clearly gnawed these bones from meat. Our ancestors' ability to crush large animal bones between stones and extract bone marrow proved to be a lifeline. So here we see these big lions, and here these scavengers, virtuous. Okay, they are gnawing the rest of meat from bones. Bone marrow contains a lot of calories and a lot of adipose tissue. While other apes were chewing leaves and roots all the time, our ancestors had time to collect and transport more large bones to safer areas where females and young were hiding from predators. As a result, rather than body size and muscle strength as in apes, evolutionary selection began to occur in our forefathers based on their ability to think and act rationally. Males who collected more large bones and crushed them with stones were more attractive to females. As a result, they had more children. And with the change in the diet, changes in the structure of the body began to occur. So here we see some idealistic representation how the primates, our forefathers, feasting on some residues from the animals, but it is actually a little bit too much. Mostly our forefathers collected bones, nothing more. But again, the change in the diet created absolutely different humans. The size of the brain started to grow, and it was growing up to the appearance of the Cro-Magnon people. Okay, what is the difference between primates like gorilla and humans? Okay, that size of the guts, intestines are very different. Colon is 2-3 times the size of the small intestine. In gorilla, in humans, colon is half the size of the small intestine. And so then a large and long small intestine suitable for dense, smaller volume of food. But it cannot digest cellulose. It is passes through the body. All these fibers from fruits and vegetables, they are passing through the body without digestion. Big belly is not necessary in humans and associated with pure health. And meanwhile, in gorilla, the microbes that digest cellulose and convert it to energy populated the colon, and they were producing short-chain fatty acids and other nutrients so that gorillas can feed on green leaves and roots. Okay, then here it is again comparison between the intestinal tract in humans and gorillas, relatively. So we have very long small intestine, and relatively short large intestine, and in gorilla or chimpanzee, it is absolutely different. It is very, very big size of the large colon. Okay, again, our digestive system is closer to carnivores, such as lion, and very different from ruminants. Very different. You see here the rhino presented. So very, very much different. The intestine shrunk in size while the brain expanded. To disinfect rotten meat and bone marrow from pathogenic microbes, the acidity of gastric juice was increased. The ability to keep a fire going and use it to disinfect food, as well as protect families from predators at night, was the next stage of development. Later, our forefathers began to hunt animals with fire rather than just collecting scraps from large predators and scavengers' feasts. Some African tribes and Australian Aborigines continued to hunt this way. They light dry grass and bushes on fire and then collect dead snakes, lizards, beetles, and even small mammals. And again, that we see that with good diet full of adipose tissue, our brain was growing very, very quick. And then fire helped to disinfect food and to stay away from these infections. And of course, it was big step in the development. And eventually, humans started to use fire for hunting. Okay, in Australia, as trees were destroyed, on mainland of Australia and much of the land became a desert, the Aboriginal diet shifted to include more plant food and insects. Between 12th and 4th century, 1,000 years ago, the brain of Aboriginals and skull size shrunk dramatically. Our European forefathers were more fortunate, as the last ice age began 110,000 years ago, making it impossible to start fires in the snow. Sharp-pointed spears were needed, and hunting of migrating animals began. Our ancestors' consumption of animal fats and proteins increased brain volume and intelligence further. It is well known that animal fat consumption is critical for toddler brain development, and toddlers get fat from their mother's milk at first, and then later on they have to get it from their food. So this is a way to hunt by fire. In Australia, it was very popular. In some African countries, it was till now used. But the results are deserts. Kalahari Desert and deserts in Australia. And skulls of the Aborigines shrunk very much. So here it is a picture is presented to illustrate hunting of humans on large migrating animals like mammoths. And humans were making primitive dwellings out of mammoths' tusk and skin at the time to keep their bodies warm at night. The meat from the hunt was preserved in the snow and ice. The problems began later when global climate change began. Mammoths and other enormous animals went extinct. As a result, to hunt smaller animals, our forefathers invented the bow and arrow. However, Neanderthals and our forefathers eventually ran out of food. Cannibalism was responsible for the extinction of Neanderthals. There was also a significant decrease in the number of our forefathers. Our forefathers developed agriculture and domesticated some herbivores in order to survive. So this was dwelling during the Ice Age, with the skin of mammoths and bones, but again, eventually humans invented agriculture. The entire agricultural process was simple. Large areas of forest were set on fire. Dead animals were collected for food, and cereal grains were thrown into the ash layer. The yields were high, and there was enough food to feed everyone. At the same time, the brain's volume began shrinking. Human cognitive abilities continue to deteriorate as the size of the brain shrinks. Every generation of humans nowadays is, on average, dumber than their parents. Maintaining current levels of technology may become impossible in the future. As a result, producing enough food to feed the world's growing population will be impossible. This was the way to grow cereals, and you see that it was a really primitive technology, but it worked. It worked. But domestication of the animal was a big step also to survive. And this is we see the size of the brain. So, and here it is 1,000 years ago, but you have to read it like from this to this. This is relatively modern data. This is in history. We see that the size of the brain, volume of the brain dropped almost 500, no, about 400 cubic centimeters or milliliters. 400, a lot of change. So we're getting dumber and dumber. Our diet accounts for approximately 80% of our overall health and longevity. Also, all people share common ancestors who once survived on the remains of large predators and scavenger feasts in the Africa savannas. Our ancestors' diet changed as they spread across the globe. It is clear that fish and marine mammal meat predominated in the diet of the people of the North and Far North. Here I will focus on the diet of men from Central Europe. Our forefathers in Europe had only a few relatively warm months of the year to mow grass for cows, grow tubers for pigs, and grow cereals for poultry. Cows eat hay and produced milk and other dairy products during the long winter months. In the winter, birds and pigs were used for meat. So this is a typical house in Tyrol. So you see that people were sharing space, sharing houses with cows, especially winter time. Winter time, the cows were indoors and they were eating hay. Okay, I deliberately avoid mentioning plant-based foods and herbal remedies because plant-based foods have always been considered food for the poor or commoners in Europe. Meanwhile, the nobility and tribal elite preferred animal-derived foods such as meat, fish, dairy products, and honeycombs. In Europe, during the Middle Ages, feudal lords spent their time hunting and feasting. Commoners in Europe would love to hunt, but it was illegal for them to do so. The meat was a luxury for the poor, and it was only available in limited quantities during the winter months. As a result, commoners lacked both physical strength and longevity. There were, however, a few exceptions. So here's a picture representing the hunting of these feudal lords in forest, but it was prohibited for commoners to do so. Okay, as we see that our brain is shrinking and probably growing more food for growing population would be impossible. So the question, will humans as depicted in the Hollywood film Soylent Green return to cannibalism in the future? It may happen if people do not understand the importance of raising herbivores and birds for animal fat and for brain development. What is the vegetarian diet propaganda persists on? Then what if, then indeed, there are calls to limit or prohibit the consumption of animal-based food. So, the idea to make to devolve humans to apes, right? So humans have future as intelligent beings, or will our brains continue to shrink until we revert to vegetarian apes? I'm not sure, but those who want to survive these difficult times and live a long creative life may find my health improvement and body rejuvenation recommendations useful. I hope so, because at least it helped me a lot. So this is a picture of the Soylent Green. I hope you watch this movie. This very old movie, and it relates to year 2022. So you see that the predictions, or I mean, and the movie about our times. Okay, in this video I express my personal opinion, and the visitor to my channel is advised to discuss the content of this video with his or her personal physician and only act upon the advice of professional medical experts. I never do so because I never sick. Last 30 years I never was getting even a flu. And especially now when I shifted to strict carnivore diet, I feel myself great. Okay, thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Please comment, subscribe, like, ask questions, and share information. Have a wonderful day. Ciao, ciao.